Good evening. Our program today is being aired from St. Paul's Pro Cathedral in Valletta, where we're speaking with the Very Reverend Canon Simon Godfrey, Chancellor of St. Paul's Pro Cathedral. Thank you, Father Simon. A very sad time for you, I'm sure.
Yes. It hasn't really sunk in, I suspect, for those of us who had a huge respect for Her Majesty. And particularly here, living in Malta, a long way away from all that has been happening in these last days since last Thursday when she died, it's still rather surreal.
She was a remarkable monarch. How do you think that King Charles will follow in her footsteps?
I've been listening to so many commentators over the last days, and more particularly listening to him, because he's been giving speeches both of thanks and initially laying out his constitutional position. For instance, when he went to Westminster Hall and received the condolences from the House of Commons and the House of Lords, he made it very clear that he is going to be a constitutional monarch. And you know, these last 70 years, his mother being queen, he's learnt his trade. And it is a trade. It is a trade.
We've spoken many times, you and I, during this program, about the Queen Consort, Camilla. How do you think she's bearing up?
With the usual dignity that she shows in all ways. I think they are a fantastic couple. She's well prepared to be queen.
Just something very technical. When we say Queen Consort in Maltese, because there's been a debate on Maltese television, how should she be addressed? As the wife of the Queen when it's translated? As Queen Consort? There is an actual translation. How, in your opinion, should that be translated in Maltese?
I suspect that just because the Queen, whom we mourn, is being called the Queen, that they are publicly making a distinction between her and Queen Camilla. But I suspect that when the mourning period is over and the new king and his queen settle in, and after the coronation, because she'll be crowned as well, which will be the first such occasion since King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, who became Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, at the King's death. When that has been achieved, she will simply be called the Queen, or Queen Camilla, like Queen Elizabeth. They used the term consort, just there sort of being a little careful, I think. I mean, if you remember when he first married her, and she didn't take the title the Princess of Wales, which is hers by being the husband of the Prince of Wales, just like Catherine is now the Princess of Wales. And it was to do with the controversy about Princess Diana. She took the name Duchess of Cornwall, which is one of the subsidiary titles of the Waleses. They thought then that she wouldn't ever be queen. But she is, because the Queen herself, Queen Elizabeth, the one who we mourn so greatly, said only a few months ago, if you might well remember, she wants Camilla to be known as the Queen.
I think Camilla is an extraordinary woman that has an extraordinary story of her own. Some of it gets a little blurred, some of it we're happy to forget, but you'd have to say this woman is being such a help to make this a success with the man that she loves. That's the only way I can think of it.
What about our new Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales?
Well, you might remember that she, Catherine, was invited to Malta, but she was pregnant at the time and was having morning sickness. So she was unable to come, but Prince William came. I remember meeting him. It was quite controversial because there was a party given on the Upper Baraka Gardens, and he felt rather put upon because of the type of people that were invited to this party.
You think they weren't all appropriate?
He didn't think so. I don't know who they were, but he didn't think so. But he was here. I met him, of course, at the... we had quite an exchange, actually, because I was carrying a fan, a palio. And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Sir, it's a palio. It's a man's fan in this sort of weather." He said, "Oh, I should like one of those. I said, "I'll send you one," but I never got round to it. Right. And then it became even more strange, and the lady standing next to me lunged at him and kissed him without asking permission. So he was slightly taken aback by that as well. Although, as you know, when the new king was looking at the flowers in front of Buckingham Palace the other day, a woman said, "Can I kiss you?" And he said, "Yes," showing the new monarch being prepared to spend time with the people. Yes. Obviously, recently, the Queen hasn't been able to, because it's Queen Elizabeth, that is, because she's not been a well lady and she had mobility problems. But no one expected, when we saw her on television kissing hands with the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, that 2 days later she'd be dead. Yes. It's quite extraordinary.
It was extraordinary that she carried on her public duty
right to the end.
Which is very admirable.
Oh.
Jean, what was your reaction when you heard about the passing away of Her Majesty the Queen?
It was a great shock. I know she was an old lady, but it was still very sad. And to show how wonderful she has been all her life, you could see from the outpouring of grief and the queues in London to view her remains. It's just a wonderful lady.
You seem very emotional.
Well, like all my life, as everyone is saying, someone of my age, just known the Queen, and now she's gone.
We were on the plane coming here when we heard of her death, and candidly it stunned us all, despite the fact that she was of a significant age. She was the rock of our country. She was a queen loved by all, respected by all. She lived a long and fruitful life.
King Charles, I think, this past week, he's been so wonderful. I mean, he's 70-something, poor man, but he has absolutely come to the front with his dedication to Her Majesty and to the whole royal family. He is now their leader and the king of the country and Commonwealth.
What about the future of the monarchy?
Hopefully it's in good hands. King Charles and ultimately Prince William look as though they will speak to the people at the people's level and not high above. And they would need to command respect of the people.
In the cathedral at the back of church, as you can see where the candle is burning, there's a book of condolence if anyone would like to come and sign the book in the Queen's memory.
As we talk about storytelling, of course, we're in the middle of one of the most extraordinary stories that has ancient roots, which is the ascension of a new monarch in England. I can't think of a more extraordinary story that's being played out. And for us, with television, to be able to be in those rooms, hearing how that transition has been made for 300, 400, 500 years, that's a remarkable moment that we're living through. And, you know, we will see what happens, but my goodness, what a wonderful moment to be witnessing.
King Charles is, in fact, the patron of St. Paul's Cathedral.
He is at the
right
moment.
now. Yes.
He only agreed to be our patron 3 months ago. I read out what he asked me to read out at the service of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee on the 5th of June. So really, we expect that he will withdraw from being the patron, and then we'll be looking for another royal patron.
Can you share with us some anecdotes about your interaction with His Majesty the King?
I've met him for 2 long periods of time. Once in my last parish in Northamptonshire, when one day the Lord Lieutenant rang me and said, we've got the Prince of Wales coming, because they were building a new village, rather like his village of Poundbury, which he was very keen on. Yes, I spent about an hour and a half with him then, and he was very easy, very interested, and very interesting. And the last time I met him for any length of time was here in October 2017, when he was here for the conference on the ocean. Queen Nor, the Crown Prince of Monaco, and Prince Charles were the 3 major speakers, and also John Kerry from the United States of America, who organised the conference. And whilst he was here, he came here, he opened our Undercrofton Visitor Centre, met lots of the leaders of NGOs, sports people, people with mobility issues.
What was the reaction of the British people living here in Malta and also the Maltese people to the passing away of Her Majesty the Queen and the new king?
Well, I think because it was so sudden, it's difficult to gauge their reaction yet. The people who've telephoned me and said, are you having a service, have all been keen to know that we will be having our Thanksgiving service for Queen Elizabeth on the 6th of November, and I hope a lot of people will come.
And your Thanksgiving Mass, is that open to the public?
Anyone may come. It's not by invitation. We'd be delighted to see anybody.
Mm.
And we may gather downstairs in the Undercroft for a drink afterwards.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. What about the suggestions that Malta should have a statue dedicated to the Queen? What are your comments about that?
It's the first I've heard of it. So, well, there seems to be some resistance from government to having statues of important people like Daphne Caruana Galizia. Why there isn't a statue to her, I have absolutely no idea. I think the time has passed in Malta that the Queen is totally appreciated by the contemporary society here. I think that the older people who recall her visits in the past would vote for a statue, but if you were asking the youngsters or even the 30-year-olds, I don't think the Queen makes an impression on their lives whatsoever. And I think that's probably quite true in many of her dominions and territories. I'm very impressed by the reaction of the population of both Scotland and England.
What did you think about His Majesty's visit to Northern Ireland?
I thought that was marvellous, because when the Queen went there and shook hands with one of the leaders of the Provisional IRA, who could well have been on duty when Lord Mountbatten was brutally murdered, when she did that, she really went to the heart of the people. This sign of reconciliation is still deeply appreciated. But I do have an anecdote about the Queen, which I'd like to share. One of her chaplains was preaching at Sandringham, where the family goes every weekend, and he was preaching about the second coming. And afterwards at lunch, the Queen said, "Oh, how I wish I could be there at the second coming of Jesus." And he replied very deferentially, "Well, ma'am, why?" And she said this, and it really goes to my heart, and I preached about it last Sunday. She said, "So that I could lay my crown at his feet."
Oh, how lovely.
And I think it's a very moving anecdote. So that I could lay my crown at his feet.
Thank you for watching our program on the passing of Her Majesty the late Queen Elizabeth and the future of the monarchy. We're broadcasting from St. Paul's Pro Cathedral in Valletta. I'm Leah Hogg for Net TV.